Hello friends, today I'm going to talk about memorizing. Have you ever memorized a piece, been able to play it through, and then you play it for performance and it just falls apart? Or you feel like it's just really unstable, like you just don't feel comfortable getting through it. So I'm going to talk about a bunch of strategies how to memorize way better. So I love this book here. It's by two cognitive psychologists, and they talk about learning. So a lot of strategies about learning. And in the opening chapter, they have this that I really thought was so applicable to how most people go about memorizing pieces at the piano. So here it is. In fact, what students are advised to do is often plain wrong. For instance, study tips published on a website at George Mason University include this advice. The key to learning something well is repetition. The more times you go over the material, the better chance you have of storing it permanently. Another from Dartmouth College website suggests, if you intend to remember something, you probably will. A public service piece that runs occasionally in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, offering study advice, shows a kid with his nose buried in a book. Concentrate, the caption reads. Focus on one thing and one thing only. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Repeating what you have to remember can burn it into your memory. And then they conclude this. Belief in the power of rereading, intentionality, and repetition is pervasive, but the truth is, you usually can't embed something in memory simply by repeating it over and over. This tactic might work when looking up a phone number and holding it in your mind while punching it into your phone, but it doesn't work for durable learning. So that's really what we want. We want mastery over the pieces we're learning. So I'm going to go through an example today. I'm going to take Schubert's Impromptu in E-flat, and I'm going to go through strategies, ways that I would use to learn this piece. And I've helped many students learn this. And when they employ these strategies, their memory can be rock solid. So they go and take it to a competition, and they can nail it in high stress situation. So that's the goal. Like, it may work out in your living room, but then like when you're under a lot of pressure, can you withstand it? Is your learning robust and durable enough to withstand that kind of pressure? So to start with, I want you to think, and I've thought about what kinds of memory lapses or memory mistakes can go wrong when you're performing. So I think the first thing to notice is not all memory lapses are created equal. There are various reasons for different kinds of memory lapses. So I made a little list. So some might be technical. You just don't have technical mastery of a certain passage. Like maybe that derails you. It's just stressful getting through some technical part. And the case is often like you'll rush, which is kind of counterintuitive. Like you'll rush the tempo and then it might fall apart that way. You might not have command of the form of the piece. Like the A section goes to the B section, goes back to the A section. Maybe there's a little difference in the A section and it transitions. You know, those little nuances there. Maybe you get lost in the form. I've seen that. Like someone performs a Mozart sonata and like they take a wrong turn and they go back to the beginning of the piece and it's like twice as long as it should be. Here's a big one, is aural command. Like, oftentimes it's not a problem with the fingers, like being able to execute. It's actually a problem of like, do you comprehend orally, like in your ear or in your mind, what the piece is doing? Because often I'll see a student, they'll be playing along fine. They get to a section, it's not technically any harder, but it might be a little weird or it'll change keys or something like that. And I don't think they have like aural mastery. Can they sing the part that they always mess up? Can you sing the bass line? You know, can you sing some of those inner voices? Having that kind of mastery will make it so much more rock solid. So you've got to put in the work. It feels slow, it feels tedious, but there's no shortcuts. Another one is just plain focus. So can you hold your attention long enough on the task at hand that, like, if you make a little mistake, can you maintain focus that when you move ahead, when you're performing ahead in the piece, you're not always thinking in, berating yourself. Like, oh, I made that dumb mistake. Like, no. I gotta always be thinking forward because, like, the past is in the past. You can't change it. Let's see here. And then there's something to be said for just the confidence in your preparation. When you're playing under a lot of stress, confidence that, hey, what I've done, I can, you've done the preparation. What I have done to prepare is sufficient. I'm just going to go and nail it, and I'm going to be as confident as I can in my preparation. Now, if your preparation hasn't been good, maybe you haven't had a bunch of like little performances leading up to a big performance, like you won't know how you're going to respond. So some of it's just setting yourself up for success. All right. So I'm going to go through this Schubert Impromptu and walk through some strategies of how I might practice it. So like the book said, make it stick. The worst strategy is just to go and repeat, right? Do not do that. That is like the worst way ever to practice it. You may get it eventually. It's going to take you forever, and it's not going to be that reliable. So don't take that strategy. There are a lot of better strategies. That might be the easiest strategy, but exert yourself mentally and be creative and find a bunch of new ways to practice that will actually benefit you instead of mindlessly repeating. All right, so this Schubert Impromptu in E flat. So maybe you've done all the work. You can execute it pretty well. You've worked out all the technical kinks. So the things I would do is just take a very bird's eye view. What is the layout of the piece? Like, could you just make broad sections? Like, okay, we have this section, right? This scale stuff, and then like that would be a first section. Then you get to this spot where he goes to E flat minor. He changes, right? That's another section. So can you map out in your mind, maybe take the piece, write it down. Hey, I got this section, I got this section. I'm going to come back. How do I transition back from E flat minor to E flat major, right? Map out the whole piece that way. And then go away from the piano. Can you verbally like express, hey, we got this section, it's an E flat scale with these little notes on the bottom, and then we're going to transition to E flat minor. Those kinds of things. In your mind, go through each section. Okay, so that's like at the very highest level. So that's forming a better like conceptual model of the whole piece. The thing I love to do is transpose it. So take it to E. And obviously your fingering will not work. That's not the point. Yeah, you could get it fluent, but like every key is going to have its own challenges. So if you took it to, A major or G flat or something, like the point is like, do you have aural command of the piece? Do you know like how is it functioning? How are the relationships working? I can guarantee you if you take the work, you don't even have to take the whole piece that way. Take a small chunk of it. Take a small piece of it, transpose it, especially really tricky spots that you might are afraid of having a memory lapse on. Take those spots, transpose them into 2-3 keys, and I think you'll be amazed at how much more secure it feels. You've gone through that effort of figuring out what are all the relationships here. I found that so helpful. I know it's tedious. It can take a lot of time, but do it. Put in the work, and I think you will be happy with the results. Okay, the next thing, I would find ways to practice this differently than what the notes actually say. So what I mean by that is, can you just analyze what are the chords here? Because we really got... It's just a bunch of 1 and 5 chords. Can you reduce it that way? I know that takes a little bit more theory knowledge, but again, you'll have a better sense of like the harmonic movement of the piece. So go through, you could just play triads. You could play them in inversions. could do that kind of thing. Here's something fun. Why don't you trade the right hand for the left hand? That gets kind of tricky, but it's another way of practicing it. The more ways the different angles you can see the piece from, the better it's going to be, like more secure it's going to be. The next thing I would do is I would try to maybe compose something new based on these kind of ideas. So you have some kind of scaly stuff and a chord thing in the left hand. So I might try to, why don't I just take notes in the bass and move them around and see if I can make a scale match it. Something like that, right? You could really improvise something new with that. So take a little idea and see if you can change it. Because, like, what did Schubert do? You got to imagine, what did Schubert do when he was composing this piece? Like, he sat down and probably noodled around, like, oh, that's kind of cool. He probably had 4 or 5 different ideas before he settled on this one. So that's kind of a fun, creative way to practice. So don't be too beholden to exactly what's on the page. That will solidify your memory. One other way, this is so good, is to sing it. So can you sing the bass line as you play? Da, 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 da. That kind of stuff. So I sing the bass line, like you probably already know the melody, right? That's probably not too hard. Often I find students, they can't sing the bass note or the middle, you got this da, 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 and that's pretty boring. It does change though. Da, da, da. So can you sing those middle notes, especially as it gets more complicated? You start moving through circle of fifths. Right? Can you sing those little like key notes? Da, 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 ya, da, 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 ya, da. So if you notice, I'm singing it before I play it. So I'm trying to think ahead, project what that note's going to be. You're going to feel way more secure if you can do that. And the best players I know, like Oscar Peterson, Glenn Gould, Bud Powell, like you name it, they're singing that stuff in their head. That's what they're thinking. They're not thinking this chord, this finger. They're like projecting this sound, this kind of singing process in the brain. They're singing. They're really singing in the end. They've mastered all these concepts into like this one thought. I'm singing this line, and that's what I'm playing. So one thing about memory too is you want to memorize before you're ready. So one thing they talk about in the book Make It Stick, like I mentioned, is quizzing yourself. So students, when they learn something and then you quiz yourself right after, before you're ready, just the struggle of trying to recall something will actually help you remember it better. So the time to play it from memory isn't after you played it a gajillion times from the page. The time to play it from memory is like after you've played it through a couple times, right? Make mistakes, make some guesses. You're like, oh, I know it's a E flat scale and it's kind of, make some guesses. It does something, right? I'm just gonna guess. The point is that you're not perfect, right? I'm just kind of like guessing random stuff, like I know the piece. The point is that you're trying to generate something as best you can, and then you can fill in the holes later, fill in the gaps. You can test where you're deficient. If you already got the scale down, but you're a little rusty on the left hand, well, now you know that because you've tested yourself. So don't Don't short sell yourself, right? It's a lot more effective to try to play it from memory when you're not ready, because the process of recalling it from memory and trying to generate something will make it way more secure. And then if you're in a performance, you already kind of know what that feels like. If you're like, I forgot this note, you can keep going. You can just fill in the holes. Like, if you play something not quite like the music, but you keep going, maybe no one will notice, but it doesn't derail your whole performance, right? Often I see a student will miss a couple notes and it just like completely falls apart. So having the bigger picture, having the bigger like aural image of what the piece should do is way more gives you a lot more security than just note. So those are some strategies I would use to practice this piece. So get creative, find as many different ways of practicing the piece as possible.